An unquantifiably long amount of time ago, there was a blank dimension without a universe in it. The fifth-dimensional cosmic traveling beings known as the Quantumalia arrive at this dimension and continue their never-ending expedition of creating universes through this device known as the Annihilargenishistoriaphimiagost, or the Annihilarg for short. Briefly before the universe was about to be created, the time-traveling would-be dictator Maltruant arrives. With him, his own Annihilarg, programmed to create a universe in his image, with himself as the supreme ruler. Before the evil Annihilarg can go off, shape-shifting hero beyond time known as Ben Tennyson arrives with his partner Rook, and using the power of all of his transformations, contains the Big Bang and defeats Malware, scattering his body into pieces across the universe, destined to repeat his failure over and over again, trapped in a time loop. Gazing upon the faces of God, Ben and Rook admire the beauty of creation. From there, the Universe Prime is born.
This video will be the first in a 5-part series of an illustrated retelling of the entire history of Ben 10, from the classic series all the way to Omniverse. The information will be presented chronologically, so you will see all flashback and time travel shenanigans play out in the order they would have happened in the natural progression of the universe. By the end, you should be well versed in the legacy that is the hero of heroes. I'd love to hear reactions from both longtime fans and new beginners of the show, and see if they can follow along.
Now, let's begin. Released into the universe are these single-celled ancestors to all DNA, known as slimebiots. These sentient genetomorphic species gather, carry, mix, and deposit DNA across the growing universe for eons to come. They are essentially the creators of most known sentient life today. Sometime after the universe had time to grow, a swampy, small planet gives birth to a genius that will become the smartest being in many galaxies. Azimuth, a Galvan who at full height is only about 6 inches tall, soon begins to flourish his passions to invent and learn alongside his mate, Zenith. His first grandiose invention being an entire artificial planet known as Primus. Obsessed with his own capability, Azimuth sought out to find a way to tap into the fundamental forces of the universe and control the laws of physics himself. Inspired by a solitary alignment, Azimuth forged the Sword of Ascalon, a sword that wields such great power, one can't help but compare it to magic. This pushed Zenith away, with a young Azimuth too ignorant to care. However, the sword was stolen by a fierce incursion warrior, hoping to put an end to their constant world wars. This eventually led to the destruction of the incursion planet. Azimuth blamed himself. After retrieving the sword, Azimuth was still longing to prove the sword's creation was valid. Eventually, Azimuth visited a, quote, pathetic backwater planet he came across on his studies. Earth, circa 1131, the medieval era. Georgius, a Roman soldier cursed with immortality, is defending his land from a cross-dimensional shape-shifting being known as the Dagon, enslaver of 100 different dimensions, and his army of demon Lucubras. To relinquish the assault, Azimuth offers the knight his sword if Sir George, the Roman soldier's current name, was worthy enough to wield it. Sir George indulges on Azimuth's offer, and engages in an epic battle, ending with George cutting out the heart of the Dagon, and leaving Ascalon buried within. As the Dagon's heart was the source of his power, George was then able to magically seal the Dagon away, freeing humanity from his reign. Sir George then founded the Forever Knights, vowing to protect Earth from extraterrestrial threats and prepare for the Dagon's potential second coming. Azimuth sought out to right his wrongs by inventing something to represent peace instead of war, hoping that one day, his lost lover would notice. Eventually, Azimuth became antisocial and put himself in isolation on Xenon, and began developing the Omnitrix, which can transform the user into a multitude of alien species. Azimuth would continue to perfect his invention over time. In the 1770s, George Washington is leading a secret organized branch of hunters dedicated to learning about and protecting the world from supernatural threats and rumors. A stranded Maltruant arrives here and receives aid from a young, banished traveler named Vilgax. Vilgax helps Maltruant repair his ship, and in return, Maltruant gives young Vilgax a Chronosapien time bomb. The two are soon intercepted by Ben and Rook time-hopping once again, and fight off young Vilgax and Maltruant with the help of George Washington. Seeing Ben transform from species to species inspired Vilgax's lifelong lust for this unique kind of power, as Ben unknowingly became the catalyst for his greatest foe. Washington cuts the anchor of Vilgax's ship, inspiring the tale of George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. This also marks the first recorded alien sighting on Earth, and Washington's organization starts to integrate extraterrestrial matters. This sets up the creation of the Plumbers, meant to fix leaks in normal society. They create a headquarters hidden behind the faces of Mount Rushmore, a nod to their original members, the Founding Fathers. In 1952, an unnamed scientist working in a secret base of operations just outside of Bellwood is completing his work on a machine that uses quartz crystal to break a hole in the space-time continuum. The machine erupts, and both the scientist and his assistant disappear, thought to be dead. In 1962, 10 years later, Air Force pilot turned astronaut Maxwell Tennyson saves the life of an energy being named Verdona from an android that aspired to use her as a power source. The two eventually start a family together. Also present was an alien police officer named Magister Labrid, who invites Max to join the force. This stems the integration of the intergalactic merger of said police force and the Earth Plumbers. Plumbers are now multi-galaxy wide and operate as the definitive law enforcement for all galaxies under their jurisdiction. Max would go on to work with many partners through his years on the force. On one of his missions, an Osmosian named Devin Levin gave his life for Max, entrusting him to keep an eye on his son. We come to know this son's name as Kevin Levin, who was born with the power to absorb any kind of energy, matter, or DNA into himself and replicate it. Of course, it would take a very long time for Kevin to control his abilities, and after accidentally destroying his family's home, he runs away to the city of New York. A few years pass, and Azimuth has finally finished the prototype version of his Omnitrix, and tasked one of Max's old love interests, Xylene, to transport the Omnitrix to the greatest plumber on record, Max Tennyson, for safekeeping. However, rumors of the Omnitrix's existence has spread through the universe. Now a fierce warlord with a reputation, Vilgax catches wind of these rumors, igniting his hunger to taste this power he once witnessed hundreds of years ago, and sets a course to intercept Xylene's mission and capture the Omnitrix for himself. A fight for the Omnitrix between Xylene and Vilgax's ship causes an explosion. This concludes with Vilgax suffering life-threatening injuries, imprisoning him on his own ship until he can properly heal. Xylene injects the Omnitrix into a pod locked onto Max's DNA, but she herself falls into the Arctic, freezing her into a deep sleep for the time being. Back in Bellwood, Max Tennyson, now retired and living in a motorhome, decides to take his grandchildren on a cross-country trip to help bring them closer together. A 10-year-old Ben Tennyson, accompanied by his cousin Gwen, begin their road trip with Max at a campsite in Yosemite Park, California. Through a series of events we later learn were manipulated by greater forces, Ben finds himself crossing paths with a mysterious meteor that fell from the sky. The Omnitrix quickly attaches itself to Ben's wrist, igniting the legend of Ben 10, kid superhero that can change into 10 different alien forms. Max has yet to reveal to his grandchildren his alien hunting past, but uses his knowledge of alien life and combat training to help Ben master his powers. The trio spend the summer going from state to state, stepping in to help out battle evildoers and save the day when they can. During a trip to New York, the gang eventually run into Kevin, who uses his abilities to absorb the DNA of Ben's aliens for him to use for his own selfish, psychopathic gain. A discharge from the Omnitrix sends Kevin into hiding, where he experiments more with the alien DNA he now has merged into his body. As their adventures continue, Ben starts to have visions of a mysterious onlooker, someone who has been spying on him and testing him by sending bounty hunters and alien drones. Vilgax's healing time has come to an end, and now with a much more powerful cybernetic body, Vilgax heads straight to Earth to claim the Omnitrix as his own. Vilgax successfully captures Ben, taunting him with his plans of creating an army of Omnitrix warriors. Max reveals his history as a plumber to Gwen, and the two head to Mount Rushmore to gather more weapons to save Ben. Meanwhile, a power surge on Vilgax's ship begins to shift Ben between his alien forms. A final assault between Ben, Gwen, and Max against Vilgax leaves him trapped on his exploding ship. Max agrees to open up to the kids about his secret life, and the three become stronger and closer together.
Thank you for watching my video. You can stay up to date with everything on our social medias and join the Discord to talk to other passionate fans. You can join the Patreon for $1 a month and see weekly updates on all of our projects, including 5 years later, which is available to read over on my website. And don't forget to check out our second channel, where we have been streaming 5 times a week. And until then, keep it fizzy.